From In the Beginning to the Musical Apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What? I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Before we begin today's regularly scheduled program, I would like to give a big shout out to some very special patrons. Scott, Danny Martinez, Susanna Juby, Jessica, David McLaughlin, Mr. Lightning, Dave Nightingale, David Cutter, Phil Thompson, Erica Rice, Travis Alexander, Kevin McDonnell, Jim Bockerstedt, Simon Griffiths, Aaron Howard, John Radwell, Vince Kitka, Alan Marks, David Lagar, and Lamims. Thank you. You are all the backbone of this show. And a very special shout out to the show's one and only member on YouTube, Doobly Doop. Thank you all for helping keep the recording light on. One more thing. At some point in today's conversation, I was pretty sure that God had sanctioned the extramarital affair between Hagar and Abraham. As it turns out, according to Genesis 16, God did not explicitly tell Abraham to sleep with Hagar. I was wrong. Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
Couldn't
didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is author, teacher, wife, and mother, Leah Chrest. Welcome to the show, Leah.
Nice to be here, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Awesome. Thank you. So, life right now, I am a high school math teacher. That's my day job.
Ooh.
And I am a mother of two, a stepmother of two, wife and daughter, and all those roles. I'm also a lay preacher, and I have a blog, a YouTube channel. I teach Christian meditation. Preach at my local church. All of those things. So my life motto is love the person in front of me. And so I have a lot of people in front of me, and that's what I spend my days doing.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Math teacher. Whew, that's a thing. Good, good job on that. Thank you for your service for the math teachers, all those kids that learning stuff that is a lot harder than I could do. So thank you for that. But your books, let's talk about your books a little bit. So the newest one, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, so it's called It's Okay to Be Okay,
Hmm.
and it's a pathway to blessing and new life. It came from my late husband, passed away from liver cirrhosis.
Oof.
And on that journey, right after he passed, I was told by so many people that I just had to survive that next year. And I wasn't okay with that. I wasn't okay with just surviving. I didn't believe that was I thought more was possible, not just surviving. Of course, I'd have to grieve. Of course, I'd have to lean into the pain, but that more was possible, better was possible. And from the Christian perspective, that God had a better plan for me. And so I leaned hard into my faith, and that was one of the best years of my life. In large part because up until that time, people would see me joyful, see me happy, and assume that it was because my life circumstances were good. They didn't know that I had an alcoholic husband at home, that I had a lot of stuff that was going on that was very difficult because I was so joyful. They just assumed it was because of my circumstances. When he passed, all of a sudden there was this realization that what was going on within me was way deeper than circumstances, that I had something that was carrying me that was much more. And I was able to introduce people to a deeper faith through that. So it was a wild time, and because I was able to lean into my faith so much, and I had some amazing, very profound experiences during that year as well. Like I said, it's gotten better and better from there. But that year was surprisingly
Hmm.
just wonderful. Not saying I didn't have tough days.
Yeah.
There were some tough days,
Yeah.
but overall, it blew me away what God can do, what the Spirit
So
can do, however you want to word that.
thank you for that. Thank you for that. So you said you leaned more in your faith in the deeper faith. What do you mean by the deeper faith and that you leaned into it?
Absolutely. So I have always been able to, I don't want to say always.
Hmm.
There have been moments in my life at various stages where I have felt something deeper, a presence, a love, an energy. And I've had some profound experiences that have really cemented my faith. I definitely went through a time, Michael, and I when I listen to your show, it just cracks me up because I was there.
Hmm.
Can I just take a brief backtrack to
By
my
all
history
means,
of the
go ahead.
Bible? Because
Go
this is
ahead.
all about the Bible, and I definitely want to dig into that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no, but we'll go back into the feelings too. But go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, because I think it's to see that
Hmm.
both of them. So I grew up Catholic, and I don't know how much you know about the Catholic faith, but we don't read the Bible much.
Hmm.
We read what's given to us on Sundays, which is maybe 20 to 30% of the Bible and maybe 5 to 10% of the Old Testament. So we leave
Typical
out all the bad
Christian.
parts.
That's typical Christian. Yeah, you're fine. That's
Yeah.
typical, no matter what denomination you go to.
Well, you still hear about some of the things, but we
Hmm.
don't hear about, getting killed for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. That
Yeah,
part
yeah,
is
they didn't
left
teach
out.
me that in Sunday school. I don't remember that one.
So I was pretty much sheltered from some of it.
Yeah.
And I went to a Jesuit college and somehow managed to find the Protestants on campus. I don't know how that happened. And I went to my very first Bible study,
Hmm.
and it was the New Testament. And I loved it. It was great. So I left college and I said, this is wonderful. I want to read the whole Bible.
Oof.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I went through it, and it took me for 3 years to make it through. And
Hmm.
I did, but I distinctly remember I was on vacation and I was sitting in a hotel room and I had the Gideon Bible because I didn't pack my own, forgot it. And I'm reading the book of Joshua and thinking, this is not the God I believe. I mean,
Hmm.
I cannot believe that. And take a step back here. In my mind,
Hmm.
if we imagine the most loving parent possible, and you can imagine whatever that is for you,
Right.
God should be better than the most
Yeah.
loving human
Hmm.
parent. I'm sorry. And if
Yeah.
he's not, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. And why would the most loving parent
Hmm.
order mass murder of his children?
Hmm.
I could not accept that. And I almost walked away
Hmm.
at that point. Um, So the one thing that kept me going was my grandfather because his faith was built on more than, I mean, he was biblically based, but there was something about him he knew. There was no doubt in his mind that God was real, no doubt. And I went to him and I said, Pop, help me here. I'm in my late 20s. I want to believe, but I got the Pascal's wager going on. If God
Hmm.
exists and I believe in him, I'm good. If God exists and I don't believe in him, I'm hosed. And if God doesn't exist, either way, whatever, right? So
Hmm.
I might as well believe in God because I don't want to go to the bad place, you know?
Like, I mean, at that point, you might as well believe in all the gods at that point. So you
Right.
don't want
I
to go
hear
to
you.
any bad
Exactly.
place. So, I mean,
And yeah, and then there's that too. And that went through my
hmm.
mind too. What if I have the wrong one? What if I have the
Yeah.
wrong religion? What if I'm
Hmm.
in the wrong denomination? There's so many questions. And he said something that really stuck with me. And he had told me about some of his experiences, of course. I don't know, I'll tell you more of my own than his. It's not so much for here. But he said, Leah, I'm almost 90.
Hmm.
And when you've seen what I've seen, how can you not believe? You're
Hmm.
almost 30, give it time. And I can say that I've had those experiences. And I'll tell you a few of them as
But
we
did
go
you get
through.
the answer to your question, though? The most loving parent is now ordering a mass murder of his children. So
Oh, and I'll
how
get
did
to that.
you get past that? How did you
Oh,
get
I'll
past
get
that?
to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I absolutely will. The next thing I did, and this is what led me to find some answers. And again, I believe in the Holy Spirits. I believe something led me to pick up the Washington Post magazine
Hmm.
one Saturday morning. I never did that. My husband read it. I never read it. I opened up and there was a book review, and I read the book review. This never happens. And it was on it's Jeffrey Long, Dr. Jeffrey Long's God in the Afterlife. And it was about near-death experiences. And I skimmed it, And I thought, I got to get this book. I don't buy books. Again, none of this is stuff that I usually do. I'll get books from the library, but I won't just buy a book sight unseen. I bought the book, couldn't put it down, and that sent me on a couple years. I read hundreds of near-death experiences because I
Okay.
wanted to see what answers were there. Now, my husband at the time was an atheist, and he was telling me, and I can see the reasons of all the things that NDEs could be biologically based, and all the
Yeah.
things that,
Yeah.
yep.
And then how do we get to your specific God as the one in these things, the experiences that are there? But did you get your answer through reading these books? Where
I
did you get
did
your
in
answer
part.
from?
Combination, but for sure that it helped. It for me, when I went through and I read hundreds and hundreds, I was able to see a common truth that underlied all religions to some level and
Okay.
that answered the questions in the Bible for
Which
me.
was? Drum
Okay,
roll,
so let's get
please.
to it. I know we're finally there. We're finally there, Michael. I'm keeping you on the edge
What
of your
was
seat
it?
here for 10 minutes. Um, okay, so let's go with the first one, which is why is the world the way it is? Okay. So,
We can
because
start
we
there,
have a
but I'm
lot
going
of
to have some
suffering here.
questions.
We have a lot of suffering in this planet, right? I
Okay.
mean, it's life is not easy here, right?
No. No.
Um, and and again, we're talking about a loving father. Like, what is this about? Why do we have to suffer?
Hmm.
Um, so I come from we talked about frameworks in one of the other episodes in the Christian framework, and I definitely come from the Christian framework. However, if we go back to just basic physics, and everything around us is made of energy, even matter is energy
Okay.
to some degree. So really what I believe God is loving energy. And it's everything we are, everything around us is made of this. There is nothing else. So God is energy. And we are pockets of God. That's what I believe. So it's not so much of this God or him
So
versus
that
her.
justifies the ordering of mass murder of his children.
No, 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 no. It's gonna take a
Oh.
while for me to get there. You have to bear with me for a little bit to get
Well, I'm
through
not sure.
that.
I don't understand any of this. This doesn't make any sense to me either. So
I
let's get
follow.
to something here to help me understand. Help me understand. So
Okay, all right.
your God is real. There's suffering in life, um, and he murdered or ordered the mass murder of children. But he also
Okay, well
did
let's
it
handle the
himself
mass
as well.
murder.
He's also mass murdered children himself with his
So
own hands.
okay, so I don't believe that. So let's go back. So let's handle the simple questions first then. So let's handle the genocide first before we get to the why the world is the way it is.
The genocide
Um,
God committed or the genocide God ordered.
Neither. So I don't believe in this case that the Bible is giving what God did. I believe it's a human interpretation of their experience of the divine.
So Jesus
So
never rose from the dead. It's just a human interpretation of something that happened that they couldn't explain.
in part, yes.
So Jesus never rose from the dead. That's not the Christian framework then.
Yeah, you got to give me. Yeah, it's going to take a lot. I'm going to completely try to overhaul things. It's going to take a lot to get to this.
Can you just
And I
explain it to me
apologize.
though? Like that's not the Christian framework. How do we get to there? Go ahead.
Right.
Let's answer
Okay,
that one. Go.
so let's go. Yeah. I'll get there. I'll get there. So if we go with the human interpretation of a real relationship, God is real and humans have a relationship with him. Okay.
You said interpretation of a real relationship. Help me
The
understand that
relationship
part.
is real, but their interpretation of it is based on where they are. So if we think, Michael, over the last 200 years, just the last 200 years alone, have humans, let's look at, do you live in the United States?
Yes.
Okay. Humans in the United States, do you believe there's been any kind of evolution for the positive?
Evolution for the positive,
Yes.
like as in physical evolution or evolution of our beliefs or evolution of our laws,
Morality?
evolution as a nation, morality. Thank you. That's a little bit helpful. Yes,
Yeah.
I do believe we have evolved morally. Yes.
Okay. So with that said, do you think that a situation viewed by someone in 1825 and in 2025 would be viewed differently? Or
No, I
maybe,
can tell you right now that they're also going to tell me it's bad to drown children.
oh, for sure, yes.
Yeah, they're also going to tell me that it's bad to require bloodshed for forgiveness. It's going to tell me it's bad to burn people for eternity. They're going to tell me it's bad to do all of these different things.
But,
Because they wouldn't do it themselves.
but what about the time of Abraham and up through the early Israel, child sacrifice was a norm in most of the cultures.
Yes, 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 but they weren't killing all of the children like God does.
No, but
Yeah.
they were killing
But why are
children.
we believing that part, but not the part where God steps in? Now I'm confused. So in the Bible where
Yeah.
it says that God's or the people are killing their children to other gods, you believe that part, but not the part where God comes in and kills children.
Well, that's documented elsewhere as well. The idea that the cultures, that's more historical detail, that child sacrifice
Interesting.
was a thing across. That's just that happened. Um,
Hmm.
and as we
Hmm.
look through
Hmm.
the Old Testament, um, we're seeing a progressive, what I believe is a progressive revelation of humans being able to understand what God's trying to tell them. And so let me kind of give you an analogy
Okay,
here.
well that brings up another question though.
Sure,
Does
go ahead.
is God able to communicate with us to where we understand?
I think this story might help. So I'm a mom, right?
But God's an
And
all-powerful God. He
yes,
should be able to communicate and all-knowing too. I mean, he knows how to communicate properly. Why does he choose not to?
because of how we're able to understand it. So as a mother, right?
Again,
I've had
he's
a
able to make it
14-year-old.
understandable.
Right. So I have a 14-year-old and but obviously I had him as a baby once, right? And let's say I have an 18-month-old son who and maybe I have a 2-month-old son. And the 18-month-old goes over and starts hitting his 18-month-old brother. As a loving parent, what am I going to do? I can't lecture the child. I can't tell him anything. All I can do is pick him up and move him. Maybe is the most I can do for 18-month-old, right?
You can still lecture him. You can still at least get that out there and oh, hey, it's bad to do this thing. No, 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 we shouldn't do that. I don't know. That's just me.
You could
But
say
again, we
no.
just
You
go
could
back to the
definitely
thing.
say
We're just
no.
limiting God at this point to the humans' ability. God doesn't have our ability. God can
That's a
do
really
anything
good
he
point.
wants. God is able to communicate with us in an effective way. If God was looking at an 18-month-old baby and trying to communicate with it, your all-powerful, all-knowing God would be able to do that.
Perhaps. I mean, yes, okay, yes, I agree that
I
God should
mean,
be able to communicate with
right?
anyone on some level.
Anything. He's God. He can do anything he wants. But for some reason, he's limiting himself in his communication style, status, whatever, with us. Why would God want to limit his communication with us? What would be the purpose of that?
I have an answer for that, but I think I jumped to another topic. Can I stick with the analogy and we can revisit that? I know that's hard.
The analogy's done. That doesn't make any sense to the question. So go ahead and go to the next topic.
Well, I think it actually does a little bit because of how the Bible's written.
But
So,
we just established that God is all knowing and God can communicate with an 18-month-old baby if he wanted to, right?
if he wanted to,
Yes. So
clearly.
how does this analogy work in any way if God can communicate with that 18-month-old baby, but you can't?
If God can communicate.
God is able
Oh,
to communicate with an 18-month-old baby. Your analogy here, your story
okay.
is that you can't communicate with an 18-month-old baby. That's great. I understand that part, but God can. And that's my point, is God can do this. So
But is
the
but is an
analogy is mute.
18-month-old baby, even would an 18-month-old baby be able to, even with God being able to communicate,
Yes.
understand
Yes.
the golden rule or
God
understand the
would
depth of oneness between him and
Again,
his
you're
God?
limiting it. Your God would be able to communicate this effectively to a child of 18 months. God can communicate that effectively to an earthworm. He is God.
That is a really good point. There's a beautiful quote from the book Illusions, written back in the 80s. I don't know if you know it, but I have a mentor that loves that book. And it says, the worst sin, and I don't really believe in sin the way Christians do, but the worst sin is limiting the is, limiting God. Don't
It
do
does.
it.
Yeah, the Bible is very specific. Don't limit God.
That's in the Bible too, yeah. But that idea of limiting God. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna have to go to the other one, which is where
Okay,
I
let's go
started.
another route because that one didn't work. I love it. This is fun.
This is fun though. I appreciate it. And I knew you would challenge me tonight, so this is awesome. Um, all right.
Hmm.
So I study
Hmm.
near-death experiences, and
Oh, oh yeah.
70% of near-death experiencers believe coming back in reincarnation. All right. Now, whether there is actual reincarnation or they're just experiencing various things, whether visually or whatever, that makes them believe it's their lifetimes, but it's really not.
Is God doing this thing with the experiencing life after death thing? Is God doing that?
Well, since God is everything, I suppose that in some way, shape, or form, you would say that he is. I think
So why
you
is
could
it not more clear about what happens on the other side there? If God is in the one doing this, why is he even doing it like in just little snippets here and there? Why can't he just explain things? Again, we're at the problem here. God is able to explain, but he keeps limiting it himself. Why?
So if we are God, so God is pure energy, right? Let's go back
Okay.
to the very beginning, pre-Big Bang. God is pure energy,
Just energy.
just energy.
Okay.
How does God know what it is?
Well, it's just energy. It doesn't have any knowledge.
It's just energy, right? So how do you get knowledge?
I don't know. I gain it, but I don't know how you get energy to learn things. I don't know. I don't
Yes,
know
you
how that
break it
works.
down to experience itself. So one of the theories out there is that energy breaks apart into what we are. We are a part of God, so that we can see something outside of ourselves. Just energy can't experience itself. It's just energy. But if it breaks down, you can experience itself. And so we are God's experience module, experiencing ourselves and growing and evolving to understand and return to the source
Right. But
with more
is
full
he
knowledge.
able to explain it during this time of after death life visiting
Yes,
thing?
that's basically what the information comes back from the near-death experiences, is that
Right.
that's
But
what's going
it's not very clear a lot of times. And we don't actually see God explaining things to people.
It happens. A lot of near-death experiences are very, very quick. You pop out of your body, you see a light, you see the surgeon working on your body or whatever, and you pop back in.
What was the
But
point
there
in
are,
that? What are the point in that? Why does God do that?
well, again, if everything is God, it's just a happening. But when your brain, so what I believe is happening here
Hmm.
is that we are God's experience modules. We're inside these bodies, and our brains are the filters. There's so much more. Pure consciousness exists, but our brains filter it out, giving you a very, so we feel separate from the all. We have this experience of separation.
That's no, I don't get any of that. I'm sorry. No. But
That's fair.
anyways, so why would God do this? That doesn't make sense. So is your God a living being, or is he just this energy thing that separated and now we're
Conscious
part of
energy.
this energy thing?
I would go with conscious energy.
Conscious energy. And where in the Bible does it say that God is conscious energy?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Word is information, is just
That's weird.
beingness.
That doesn't say that God was energy and he broke apart into tiny pieces so that we could all be part of his
No,
experiences or experiment or whatever
we
it was.
don't have that in the Bible. We don't
Right,
have
we don't
that.
have that. So again, you don't have this Christian framework. I am not seeing the Christian framework here. It's something
And that's
completely
fair.
different here. I don't know what it is, but it's not that. It's
Okay.
interesting. So is this energy, we're going to go right back again. Is this energy able to communicate with his other energies in an effective manner?
So, yes, chooses not to. And the
Why?
reason is, is because on on this earth, if we believe we are separate from that, we grow and evolve differently than if you feel that connection. So it allows the idea of separateness, the idea of not being totally connected, helps us grow faster. That's the wisdom that comes from the NDEs, is the idea that we're
Wow.
here to be challenged. I mean, can you think about even workouts, right? When you go to work out at the
I
gym,
want to go to the extreme. Let's go to the extreme. Children assaulted in God's house. What is the point in that? Does God need to experience this?
the argument is yes,
That's
that one of the
disgusting.
answers that it was why is there, it was just someone talking to Jesus in near the experience, and he said, why is there evil?
Hmm.
And the answer was because there's good.
That's disgusting. So God is unable to stop these evils from happening, or he
Oh, he
wants
can.
these evils to happen so people can experience them.
To experience is to know what love is. When you
That's
experience what
not
it's
okay.
not,
Stop. That is disgusting, Leah. To have that happen is not to experience love later on. I can experience love without being assaulted in God's house. That's disgusting. That's horrible. I'm sorry. Okay. So God's unable to experience or have us feel love unless the children are assaulted in church or we have people like Pol Pot going around slaughtering people. You're telling me I can't experience love without this extreme level of evil.
I wonder, and I don't, and this is, it always gives me more questions than answers, right?
Hmm.
I don't understand why we need such extreme dichotomy,
Hmm.
right? I agree with you. It doesn't, but that's the best way I can make sense of it. I can't honestly understand evil
But that doesn't make
otherwise.
sense though. You try and make sense out of it with that, but again, it falls apart. That framework isn't very solid. So help me understand. Help me understand here.
I mean, I understand what you're saying that extreme evil, I guess if you would consider this, that what if our souls, eternity is a long time, right?
Mm,
And what if, whether we live one life or multiple lives, because I honestly don't know. Um, we are here for what? Between 0 and 100 years, 120 in max case,
mhm.
compared to all of eternity. This blip, regardless of the pain, somehow that benefits and gives you information on the other side that is
Man,
worthwhile.
yeah. And I'm saying that's a terrible way to go about things. Your God is all powerful and all loving. He can find a better way to do it than that. That is disgusting and terrible. Do you believe that there's a Satan?
I believe that there is, yeah, energy
Man,
that, so
your Christian framework, these nails are just falling out.
I believe that there is an energy that is what is not. So that there is a what is not. So I guess you can call that Satan, and the God is, so God is the all, right?
Mhm.
Jesus is God manifest in the most possible fullest, like the fullest possible form
Huh?
of God is Jesus on earth that
The
you could see
fullest possible form of
in a
God is
human body.
Jesus on earth. Help me
So like
understand
the
that,
being fully
those
aware.
words.
So the difference between Jesus and you and me is that Jesus was also part of the God consciousness on earth in a body, but was aware of his connection to the divine. So when he says the Father and I are one, the Father and you are one, the Father and I are one, but he was aware of it.
Same person essentially. So man, okay, so we can get into that. So why did Jesus come to earth? Why was Jesus here? More suffering?
No, so yes, he died, and I know in one of the episodes you talked about it as suicide, and I agree with you on that. That
Absolutely,
that
yeah,
does
yeah, yeah.
that does make sense. Again, a little bit of NDE backtrack that a lot of what I read about was that we pick our life experiences before we come, including the bad ones, especially the
That's
bad
not in the
ones.
Bible either.
No, it's
No,
not.
that's not a Christian framework either. I'm throwing away the Christian framework. I'm done with it. I'm not even going to bother with it anymore. So help
Okay.
me understand. Help me understand.
So sorry about that. Okay, so Jesus coming in
Mhm.
is coming in with the fullness of God, the
So he
fullness of
chose this.
knowing
No,
his,
no, he chose this action. Jesus chose to come to earth and
yes,
chose his life. He knew what was going to happen. He was going to die on a cross. Right.
yes.
So why?
So up to that point, animal sacrifice was very common. I mean,
Hebrews
that was a Jewish
9:22,
thing.
without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. We believe that part of the
Yes.
Bible?
No, I don't believe it that we need
Okay,
to
so
shed
then why
blood.
would you say that? So, okay, so why did Jesus come here? If that's not even part of the Bible that you
Oh
believe
no, it's
in,
in the Bible. It's
the
absolutely in the
blood,
Bible. I thought you said,
it
do I
is in the Bible,
believe
but
that we
not
need
part
to
of the Bible
shed
that you
blood?
believe in.
It's in the Bible.
But
Yes.
it's not part of the Bible that you believe in.
I believe, no, I do not believe that we
Okay,
need to
so why did
sacrifice
Jesus come here if we
to
don't
get
even
rid of
believe in
it.
the sacrifice part?
To get rid of the animal sacrifice, to let humans know that they don't need to do this anymore, that they can stop with the animal sacrifice
So,
and that they
did
can
they need to
accept a
sacrifice
oneness.
animals? Yes or no? Did God need bloodshed for forgiveness? Yes or no?
I believe that God gave us the bloodshed to help us to understand forgiveness at the time because that was where humanity's
I don't
evolution
understand.
was.
How does that make sense? God gave us bloodshed so we would understand bloodshed, forgiveness.
So at that time, again,
Bloodshed to
it's
understand
well,
forgiveness.
it's a heck
I
of a
don't,
lot better than child sacrifice. If humans are at the point of child sacrifice,
what?
the next step up is animal sacrifice. So that's where I
Or
was
he
going
could
with the
just
toddler
forgive
thing.
people. We could just forgive people and get rid of the blood part. That's the case. If God is an effective communicator and he doesn't want the bloodshed, he can come down and say, hey, don't do the bloodshed. Why does he have to kill himself to tell everybody not to do the bloodshed? Why can't he just say, hey, we're not doing the bloodshed anymore, everybody? but he feels the need to come down and die and kill himself to show us that we don't need blood. That is so weird, Leah. So weird.
That's fair. I mean, I definitely respect where you're coming from, and this took me years to come around to this idea that there was because the other did not make
Mm.
sense.
This
This
doesn't
to
make
me,
sense.
that's fair. I don't think you haven't found one that does make sense yet, have you?
Right. I still have these conversations because maybe one day I'll have that something will make sense. But yet this is not making sense either, and you're unable to connect the dots for me as well. So I don't think it makes sense to you either. You think it does, but it deep down it falls apart. It falls apart. We just destructed it. So
It
I
doesn't in my mind, but I do understand. I think that the thing that we disagree on is that it is possible that suffering can have a purpose to
not that level of
increase
suffering.
knowledge.
There's no
What's that?
purpose. There's no purpose to that level of suffering. There is
And
no
that's where I
purpose to
would
that.
so losing my husband was the best thing that ever
I'm talking
happened.
about being assaulted in church here. That's what I'm talking about. There's no purpose for that level of suffering,
Or the Holocaust. So there's things like
or
that
the
that
Holocaust, or Pol Pot, or all the crap that's going on right now. That level of extreme, there's no purpose for that.
I guess we have to agree to disagree on that
Find a
one.
purpose. Help me understand the purpose for those things. Because you said it was no, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to go there. That's going to make you upset. So, anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to move on a little bit here. I want to go back to the feeling and kind of close it out in that area. So this feeling that you got that told you that this energy God person is real that you believe in from the Bible, but not from the Bible ish. I'll go ish. Bible-ish.
Yes.
What was that feeling that convinced you that this is real over all the other gods out there?
Okay, so I only believe in one God. There are no
But there
other
are
gods.
other gods out there. You do know that people believe in other gods.
I believe they're all one and the same.
Right, but they don't. You can
Well,
believe
even
that, but
Hinduism
you have
was
to accept the
originally a
fact that
monotheistic religion.
other people believe in other gods and that there were gods that came before your God.
I don't believe that I believe there's only one God.
I
I
know you
believe that
believe that, but in history, we have evidence of people believing in other gods. We have lots and lots of different gods. Leah, I have a god that I created. It's the green light god. All hail the green light god. This green light god helps me go through green lights. If I think green thoughts, I'm going to go through the green light faster. That's my belief, anyways, because my car died and it was green and it got totaled. And so now it's gone
oh,
on to be the green light god. And me and the kids made that up. So, how do we know the green light god's not real?
okay, that's fair. So I understand what you're saying, that there's names for these things that are just figments of the imagination
So, you're
versus a
saying
real
that
deity.
your God is my green light god, is what you're saying. They're all one. All these gods that have ever been created in the world that people actually believe in are all this same God. It's your God. So, how do we get from my green light God to Jesus?
Okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around the green light God as being
My car sacrificed itself so my family could be safe. And it went on to be the green light God. So help me understand how my green light God that sacrificed itself to keep my family safe in a car accident is your God specifically.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying that no, that there is one true deity, but there are a lot of things that we make up to try to satisfy that
How do you
longing
know that?
of
How do you know
separation.
my God's not real and yours is?
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'm trying to go
It's
back
got
to
to be
get
more than a
one that
feeling here, because feelings we can't trust our feelings, Leah. I mean, I can't trust my feelings, especially for directions. I am terrible at that. So no, I cannot trust my feelings, especially for something huge. I'm going to have to investigate it. I'm going to have to know for sure. I'm not going to
right.
just willy
Okay,
nilly. Yeah.
absolutely. Now I know where you're coming from. I was a little confused in myself for a few minutes.
So no,
Um,
yeah, they're all one God. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I agree with that. No, there's stigmas of the imagination, and then there's an actual deity, or
How do we know?
the everything.
And
Yeah,
how do
and
we
how
know
do we
it's
know?
yours?
Okay, I'll tell you a couple stories, but the one that might be most convincing.
Tell me the most convincing one. That's it. I want the most
Oh
convincing one. And then
gosh.
we're going to dissect it a little bit. Go.
Okay,
I love this. Thank you, Leah.
I'll try. Um, I have one of my mentors is a man named Bill, and he was a friend of my dad's. And I didn't know this story until years later. I just knew my dad and him were friends. My mother died when I was 2 months old,
Hmm.
and my dad remarried a year and a half later to my what I know as mom. Um, After he had married my now mom, he had a dream one night, and in it, he was playing tennis with my birth mother. But he didn't know it was she looked different. She didn't look like my birth mother, but he felt like it was her, but it didn't look like her. And the woman in the dream that didn't look like her but felt like her told him it's okay to move on. That love your new wife like you loved me. He goes to work that day. Bill comes into his office and says to my dad, "We need to talk." And my dad says, "Okay," drops everything and walks out to lunch. And Bill says to him, "You had a dream last night," and explained the dream to him, exactly what had happened. And he said, "This is what this was," because he had had the same dream. And this has happened multiple times with Bill and with Bill and me. We have had this happen where I'll
The
have
same dream
something
or different ones?
different dreams for sure.
Gotcha.
But that is one example of
That's your
that.
best one.
I have a lot, but that's I think the most because that I don't know how you would explain that from a well, I'd like to hear your explanation.
I'm
And
not going to be
with
able to
it,
explain it. I can't. I cannot explain away this thing that happened. But what I can do is narrow it down. How do we narrow it down to your specific invisible person sending dreams to people? How do we do that? Because again,
I
we're just back
don't
to feelings. And I gotta have more than a feeling because again, I don't trust my feelings.
can you go with there's something more than what's in our physical bodies? Because I can't send that to you. I can't give you that on paper, right? It's
No,
something
I
that
don't believe
happened.
in magic outside of reality. I don't. I don't. Not in the spirit worlds. There's no leprechaun world. There's no My Little Pony world. No Care Bears in the sky.
So
I
that
don't
was
have
just
any
one
of
of
that.
those like you open the dryer and the laundry's magically folded kind of moments then. Is
That
where
would
you
be
have to go with
great.
it.
Do you have that dryer? I need that dryer. That would
I
be
know, me too,
amazing.
right?
That's $1 million idea
Seriously.
right there. No, again, I'm going to go with I don't know, but I'm not going to choose your specific invisible friend because I have no evidence to prove that your specific invisible friend did it over anybody else's invisible friend who created the world. So I'm not going to
Okay.
pick and choose. I'm going to go,
That's
I don't
fair enough.
know. That's what I'm
I
going to
told you my
go.
late husband was an atheist, right? For a
Yes.
while. He wasn't his whole life, but for a year or so he was. And one night my atheist husband is laying next to me, reading or listening to a U2 song. I don't remember
Oh,
which one.
I'm
I,
sorry.
I love U2 though.
Well,
And I'm
nothing
I'm
against
sitting
you. You're
there.
fine. You're fine.
What's that?
Nothing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So he's listening to U2, and I'm reading a book, and all of a sudden he grabs my leg and he just looks at me wide-eyed, and he says, "Leah, I just saw God." And I said, "What?" This is the atheist laying next to me, right?
Mhm.
Saying, "I just saw God."
A
And I said,
God, apparently.
"Yes, right, exactly." I
Yeah.
said, "What happened?" And this is someone who was extremely accurate with words. He and I would have arguments like you and I have right now, regularly. I mean, we'd have hour long, just round and rounds. This reminds me so much of those conversations. He would
Fun,
tear me
fun.
apart. All my logic, all my reasons to believe in God, everything I'm just saying to you, he would tear it apart. He'd say, "How do you know? It's garbage." Just,
But he
a little
saw
bit more with
God.
vitriol because he was my husband and we could do that, right? So
Yeah.
he'd
Yeah.
say some scathing language to throw in there too.
I
Um,
don't. I don't think that's very nice. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I said, "You're not scathing," is what I
No,
was
that he
saying.
did that. I don't think it's very nice. But go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me. What was it? What
Well,
he
he was
saw
an he
God?
was an
What happened?
alcoholic, so there were some things there.
Oh,
Um,
oof. Yee,
yeah,
that's not really. Yeah. Well.
yeah. So,
So
and
was he
again, does
drinking at this
that
time when he saw
I'm
God?
sure he had some in his body. I would absolutely you can't deny that
Alcohol.
because he was an alcoholic, right?
Alcoholics
So,
see aliens too.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I hear you, and so that always made me doubt this.
Uh-huh.
But he said he saw a light, and it was just perfect. It was pure. After a half hour of trying, of stumbling over his words, he said,
Uh-huh.
"Leah, it was pure perfection." And from that point on, now he had multiple other things happen. One night he came into the room, to the bedroom, and he said, "Who the F is?" And he gave me, I can't say because I'm trying to keep confidentiality with my family, my
Fine. Yeah.
great grandfather's first, middle, last name, which I didn't even know. I knew the last name, of course, but I didn't know the rest. And he said, "Who is it?" I said, "I don't know, honey." And he says, "Figure it out," because he's talking to me right now. I'm like, what is going on? So again, there's something going on outside. It's kind of
I don't
crazy,
know.
right?
I don't know. That's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah. And I
suspicious
had the
there.
same
Perfect
experience.
light too. I mean, even if he saw a perfect light, how again and again and again, how are we attributing this to your specific invisible person? Aliens. It could be aliens, pure light that's making him feel comfortable. Like there's so many different things we can come up with, so many different ideas. I don't understand
Well, and
how
that's
we
where I
get
think,
specifically to your invisible person.
well, I go to energy because I think God is not a person, but I believe it is
Energy.
everything.
So there's
The all in
is God
all,
the only energy out there?
the Alpha, Omega, beginning and the end. Yes.
Is the only energy though? There's no other
So there's
energies
either,
out in the universe.
I see what you're saying. Like, is there an evil energy? Is there something?
No, I'm just saying, are there any other energies? Like there could be a neutral energy. Why can't there be a neutral? Why does there have to be an evil and a good and nothing else? Very black and white. Can we have other entities or energies out there?
That's a beyond what I can feel like I can speak to comfortably. I don't know.
So we don't
I
know
would
if there could
say
be other energies out there, but we believe in this one energy,
so. I
and
would
we
say
know
it's
that
all
this.
one energy is the best I can do. But is there a an evil energy? I don't think so. I think it just is or it's not. It's what is not.
And what
So
is
it's either
not is
what is
evil.
or what is not. That's the best I can do.
But
What did you
and what
say? I'm
is not
sorry.
is evil, right?
Say that last thing. I'm sorry.
The what is not part of it is the evil part, correct?
That's the best I could say. Yeah. That there's some sort of what is not that we would say is the evil. Yeah. That's the best I could come up with.
All right,
Can
so
I
where
jump
did
to the
this
Bible though? Because where the Christian framework comes in for me? Because I do.
So we do have a Christian framework somewhere over here. It's very
Yes.
loose and very weak, but it's there somewhere. Let's go
So,
into that, but I want to get back to the energy parts, the energies and where they came
but right
from.
now you want to do the energy first, or do you want to go to the Christian framework first?
Let's go to the energies first. We're on that right now. So
Okay,
the
sure.
energies, where do they come from? Where did these two energies, the dark energy and the light energy, come from?
Or what is and what is not, which is I don't even know. I don't
Or
know how to
whatever you want to
explain
call it.
that.
Sorry, yeah,
That's
yeah.
beyond my ability.
The nothing.
It just
Oh, I
is.
love it. We'll call it the nothing.
They'll call it nothing. I like that. We'll call it the nothing because I have no freaking clue. Um, this is
Great
beyond
movie.
my pay grade for sure. But yes, I do. It always was, always is. Again, this is going back to the Bible with the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end from Revelation. There is no end to it.
That's so
There's no
weird. You
beginning
just
to it.
like you're such a scissor
No
Christian.
idea.
That's what you are. You don't have a framework. You're a scissor Christian. You just cut out the little parts you like, and that's what you go
Yeah,
with.
I would
Oh
agree
my
with Sister
goodness.
Christian.
Oh my
That's pretty
goodness.
good.
So the energies always have been. How and how does that work for you? Energies that will always have been, and then one day they separated or split off into little parts. Help me understand why these energies randomly throughout eternity. They were there forever, ever and ever and ever and ever and ever doing nothing. And then one day, why?
The best explanation I've come up with is that it's to experience itself somehow. And
It
again,
took
that's
eternity for it to figure that out, and it's an all-knowing thing. Doesn't it know everything? So why would it need to experience things if it already knows what the experience is going to be like?
that's a great question. And I don't know, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me.
But it
Because
doesn't make sense because you don't even know. You don't know how it works. So that means it doesn't make sense to you.
I don't know if we can ever, our brains are pretty limited.
Right. So I'm not going to say something makes sense to me if it doesn't make sense to me. How we all got here, the creation of the universe, the Big Bang, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I'm not going to say it makes sense to me because it doesn't. So
Okay, it
that's
makes
where we're
more
at
sense
here.
to
We're saying a
me.
lot of things, but they don't make sense.
I guess it makes more sense to me than a God who
Oh,
has wrath, who sends people to hell, who kills his own children. It makes more sense
so
to me that we
okay.
have God experiencing himself.
That's how we
And
get from there to there. That's how we get past that part as we take God and turn him into an energy. Interesting.
that's
Interesting.
the best I could do. And it allows me to make sense
Mm,
of all that I've experienced. And this is where I think that we take the
mm.
Bible way too seriously in so many ways, in the sense that we take it as God said this, the idea, and this is a verse in the New Testament, right? That all like every verse in the Bible is God breathed,
All
right? God
scripture is God
inspired.
breathed and useful for teaching, preaching, and correcting and training in righteousness.
Exactly. Man, I love how well you know you can just, that's awesome.
But it's in
I
there,
know
and,
it's
and
in there, but I can't get the words around it all the time.
yeah, but why don't you do you believe that part?
I believe that it's that a lot of the Bible, so it's God's interaction with humans, right? And so the humans' interpretation of these interactions is what we're getting.
So no, it's
And
not. It's not useful for all of that things because humans' interpretation is wrong. So no. So you don't believe that verse.
I don't believe that all of it. I think it's, yeah, I think
So
a lot of it you have to throw out.
right,
So,
right,
but
but
I
we're
do think
we're yeah, cutting parts
there's
out.
some pieces that we have to take more seriously. Like, for
Why?
instance, God's interactions with Abraham,
Why do we have
and
to take those seriously?
because it shows how God actually works in our lives.
Whoa. Okay, so Abraham and Isaac story where he asks him to go sacrifice his kid because God didn't know what Abraham's heart was like.
So I believe in that story, my best interpretation. But can we go back a bit with Abraham? Because where did Abraham start? He had
I want to
some
go to
faith.
the gross part. How do you rectify that situation?
So the best thing I can do with that, and this has always bothered me, but the best
As
way
it
that
should.
I've
Thank you.
reconciled
That's
it.
good. That's a good thing.
Yes. No, it's always bothered me is there's two pieces of that story that I can say, okay, there's some hope here. One is, again, this is a culture of child sacrifice. So asking him to sacrifice his son was typical for the gods, whether that's the green light god
Oof.
or Yahweh, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's these gods asking you to sacrifice your children. And so if Yahweh asks him, well, isn't that, maybe I
That's
should do
gross. That's
this.
still gross though. That's
It's
still
terrible.
a
It's
terrible thing.
very
That does not
gross.
rectify it.
Yes,
Does not
yes,
make it
yes,
better.
yes. I'm not done. I'm not done with
Okay,
that.
okay, okay, okay.
Okay. So so Abraham believes that God is asking, whether God is actually asking him to or
Hmm.
not, I don't know. But he believes he is. But when he goes up the mountain with Isaac, he tells his servant, wait for us here,
Okay.
which some interpret as he knows that Isaac's coming back down with him alive.
Wait, why would he tell the servant, by the way, I'm going to go kill my kid up on the thingy? It's just going to be me coming back. Of course, he's not going to say that. He's going to be like, we'll be
It's
right
possible.
back. Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah,
but then
he's
God
about
does
to
throw him
kill
the
his
ram,
kid.
right? So whether God actually told him, which I don't believe happened, I don't believe God
So you
actually
don't
told him
believe
to.
that story.
I believe that he believed that God asked him to sacrifice his kid.
But the Bible specifically says that God asked him to sacrifice his kid. So you don't believe that story. You just, again, we're cutting little pieces out here and there, the parts you like, the parts you don't like. It's very scissor Christian of you.
I think I have. If you're not a scissor Christian, then you're a confused, scared Christian.
I think most Christians are confused, but that's just my experience. I think you're
Yes, and
confused
I
on a lot
agree
of
with
these
that.
topics as well. So, and
Yeah.
mm, mm.
And
But
it's
thank
hard.
you.
And I
No,
think that is where I mean I've experienced so many things. Okay, but back to Abraham.
go
So
ahead. Let's finish
Abraham
it up
is
with Abraham. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so Abraham is leaving with Ur to go to the what will eventually be the promised land. And he has that faith to go. And then he's told, hey, you're going to have a son. And this clearly happens. He has a son, but he doesn't believe God's going to really do this, at least not the time frame. It's not happening when he thinks he is. And so he has the affair with Hagar, not affair, but he takes Hagar, because he had more than one wife back then,
The Bible
has
says that God told him to do that, correct?
no.
The
I
Bible says that God told him to have the kid with Hagar. I'm pretty sure.
You might be right on that. I might be remembering wrong, but I know that he says you're going to have one by
Mm,
Sarah is the
But
ultimate.
I think that was afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the whole situation. I'd have to go back and read it. But
I
either way,
believe
go
it
ahead.
was, but yeah. So yeah, I believe that Hagar was Abraham taking things into his own hands.
Mm.
And you also know, obviously, that you talked about this in one of your other episodes, the whole story about Abraham taking Sarah into the different other civilizations and saying, "Oh, she's my sister. Say you're my sister."
Yeah. Yeah.
And God
Yeah.
saves Sarah, her honor, and pulls her out twice, right?
Uh-huh.
So each time Abraham's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't know. I don't know that God's gonna be faithful. And then at the end of the story with Isaac, God says to, and this probably is accurate, says, go send him back to your people in Ur
Why is that
and
part
get a
accurate?
wife, right? And Abraham sends his servant, and his servant says, this isn't going to happen. He says, woman who comes to the first person you see, you're going to get a wife back. You're going to bring a wife back. He's like, I'm not bringing a wife back. Who's going to come all this way with me
Hmm.
to marry your son? And Abraham says, it'll happen. Just wait. And so that idea
Interesting.
of God revealing his heart to someone and it's a messy relationship because Abraham's trying to figure it out the whole time. But I think that's a beautiful model of what it means to wrestle with and
Mm,
understanding when we are in these separate bodies, when we don't have, like you're saying, wouldn't it be great if God just showed us himself and made it all super clear? Well, either God
mm,
doesn't exist,
mm,
right? Which is where you're standing,
mm.
or he does, and
No. Or he
you
does
think
in
there's an
what?
in between?
Yeah, well, either he does and he's unable to communicate, or he refuses to communicate.
Yes.
There's
Or he
lots of
doesn't
different
exist.
options in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think a loving God would refuse to well, I guess okay, take that back. He refuses to
Hmm.
communicate clearly because we're in that process of learning, of experiencing God experiencing him himself. And so is that
God doesn't
renewal.
need to learn, no, and God knows everything. So if we're parts God and we have to experience something to be able to communicate correctly with the same person that we are, none of this is making sense. It's not adding up for me. Of course, Leah, right back to the beginning, but that's okay. I appreciate your time today. Appreciate all your answers today and your discussions for sure. Go ahead and close it out with where can we find you, and then any closing comments.
Awesome. Yeah, we can find me on www.thecontemplativechristian.com. And on there I'd primarily focus on what it means to listen to the Holy Spirit,
Hmm.
which is my understanding of that communication and what that looks like, what Abraham experienced, what Daniel's experienced, what David experienced, what Paul experienced, what Jesus himself, as he's communicating with the Father that he is one with, experienced and lived. And I believe that takes us from that place of fear
Hmm.
to a place of love and connection and the peace that passes all understanding and the complete joy that Jesus promises. And
Hmm.
so that reliance on that, I believe, is just following the what is true in the Bible, and that truth is that relationship. And so
Is
that's what I'm
subjective.
about.
It's your truth, not the Christian truth, though. But I appreciate you sharing it with me. Thanks for taking the time. Stay safe out there. We'll stay in touch.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Have a good night.
You too. That's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find all things BSW related on the show's website at thebiblesayswhat.com. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to thebiblesayswhat.com and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will get you early access to each new episode on Wednesdays instead of Sundays. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly share and review the show?